Welcome to another edition of the Plus One interview. And today I have Miss Kristen Pope here with me. Been trying to get her on for a while. She's such a busy lady, but she got some time today to speak with me. How are you, Kristen?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well, and I'm happy to say that.
Yeah. I mean, we are, the revolution is being televised. The people are fed up. The younger generation are definitely fed up and making change. So, as everything's been happening, it's been 10 days since George Floyd's murder. As everything has been unfolding, initially, what were some of your first thoughts when the first couple days happened?
I think those first days were filled with shock and hurt and anger, disappointment, um, rage. I think that's probably the emotions that were filling up that first day, those first few days. And then wanting to, see some quick action taken.
And the action was, it's, I mean, it took for a riot. It took for the people to damn near burn down an entire city just to get an arrest. Now, that's one step in the right direction. What would you say to the people that were persistent into getting justice, the people that were persistent into getting these officers arrested? What were your thoughts on how they were able to be persistent and get something going as far as an arrest for that officer?
Well, for the first officer, I think that's unfortunately been the pattern that we've seen, in is that we've had to apply pressure on the system in order for something to happen. The system kind of feels like this wall, feels like kind of like the blue wall.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like that blue wall that unless we apply pressure to it, often doesn't break. And it shouldn't take that. But oftentimes it does. So I am grateful. I salute every protester. I'm with you. I am signing petitions. I am using my voice. This is exactly what we ought to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there is, unfortunately, as a member of the media, I'm disappointed to see the media spend so much time focusing on riots.
Yep.
and looting and things of that nature, because that's an angle that we are creating and taking. And we see that during the daytime, most of these protests are peaceful. We also see that most of the people who are protesting are actually people who want justice for George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope, and I don't know if I'm getting too far down in our interview, but I'll just say this: my hope and my prayer is that these protests and these riots and the destruction to these towns will leave enough of a scourge and enough of a mark that these cities will turn inward and say something needs to change. That when we unjustly kill someone, take someone's life, this is what's going to happen. And if you don't want to see this happen anymore, if you don't want to see the oppressed rise up in this way, then treat the oppressed as humans.
Yeah.
Give them their rights. Give them their equal and their civil rights.
Mm-hmm. One of the main things that the protesters really wanted to hit on the head is they're tired of not being listened to. They're tired of people just brushing away their concerns. If we go back to 2016 is kind of what kickstarted all of this. What's happening right now? If you go back to everything that went on in 2016 is kind of led to this point. And even in 2016, when they were having the Women's March, they were also having protests, and all the people wanted for the people in power was to listen to them. This is what's going on. This is what's happening in our country, and things need to change. And they did not take them seriously then, and it seems like now the people are making sure they take them seriously now because they're tired of not being heard.
Well, and the hope is that this is a tipping point. This is a turning point. But we got to take it back much further than that. 2016 is just what, 4 years ago. But we're talking, protests and riots and sit-ins and fights for equal justice date far. I mean, we can go back to the Civil War. We can go back to the 1800s. We can go back to the 1700s, where when we see justice being given to those who are oppressed, it's usually because they demand it. It's usually because there is bloodshed. It's usually because lives are lost at the battleground that those things actually come to bear.
Yeah. With all this happening, there's another thing that's that's under the radar right now that needs to be spoken of more is Breonna Taylor. There still have not been an arrest made in her case, and this happened, last month.
Months ago. Yeah.
Months ago, we find out a couple months after it happened. And also in the country, since last year, there's been numerous trans women of color that have been killed. And it seemed like their stories are not being told, or it's not being covered. That's another thing that we all need to bring to light, is the women that have been killed and are being overlooked, and the trans women of color that have been killed that have not gotten the media attention that they deserve.
Absolutely. And I so appreciate Brittany Packney, all of the women, Tamika Mallory, and the men who are continuously on the front lines fighting for the Breonna Taylors to receive the media justice that they deserve, because it's not just Black men, it's Black people, and while we may not hear about the women who it's happening to women as well. And the fact that there has been no arrest made in the Breonna case is abhorrent. It's unacceptable. And her name needs to be said. We have to continue to keep fighting for her. This is a widespread issue. It's not just Black men. It's Black people.
Yeah, definitely. I think I just read they've asked the FBI to launch an investigation on her death. I just read that a little bit.
Well, and you know what the tragedy also, unfortunately, with that is that there's no video.
Yeah.
There's no video into what happened. And so, in these situations, sometimes people are critical of those who are taking video, but we know that if somebody wasn't taking video in so many of these situations, we would never know.
Mm-hmm.
We would never know if there were no video. And unfortunately, I don't believe that there's any video in the Breonna Taylor case, which is probably why it's taking longer. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, very unfortunate, because it's just African Americans have been saying these things for so long. With the police brutality and the police harassment, and so many people just thought they were making it up, and now even with videos, people think they're making it up, or they try to say, oh, that person did something and then follow officers' direction. But it's also, when you are in a position of power, or when you are the authority figure, you should know how to de-escalate a situation. You should know that having your knee on someone's neck for more than 30 seconds is not right. Having your knee on their neck for 9 minutes is ridiculous. Yeah. And for some people, they just take the officer's words, and that's that. The person that was killed is the criminal.
And so often Black people just are criminalized. We are guilty before we are proven innocent. We are made to be guilty for it first. Our color is weaponized. Our integrity, our humanity is made guilty. And so, someone brought it up to me today, and it was a great question to ask. What if the roles would have been reversed? What if the man on the ground was white and the cop was Black? Mm-hmm. Do we think that cop would be, just fired and arrested? And the cops, and let's say there were Black men around him who let that go down, Do we think that it would take this long? Do we think it would take a video? I mean, I just don't. I think if the roles were reversed, it would be very different. So you have that issue right there. But then you also have the fact that this man was already on the ground. He was on the ground unarmed, with his hands behind his back. Was that necessary? No, it wasn't necessary. You know, which is why we have to use the language, the correct language. He was murdered.
Yes. And all of this is for over a counterfeit $20 bill. When you put it in perspective,
That he may not have not even known. He may have not even known that the $20 bill was counterfeit. He didn't even get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah. I heard the store owners say that if they weren't there, but if they were, they would have never called the police for a counterfeit $20 bill. It's sometimes you got to take things, you know.
Well, and it sounds like, you know, I mean, to give the perspective and the context that is the rule of law in Minnesota, that if you receive counterfeit money, you're supposed to call the police. That needs to be addressed. I hope that now within Minnesota, they address that here, if that's the law of the land, it's cost this man his life.
Yeah.
For what?
For absolutely nothing. Now, how are we as the people going to be able to keep this momentum going, just to be able to make sure that we keep letting these people, the folks in power, know that we're not going away anytime soon until we see drastic changes. And this is 2020. One of the most drastic things people can do is vote. That's one of the most important things people can do this year is vote. But also beyond that, we have to find a way to keep applying pressure to those in power.
Listen, we got to quote the prophet, Killer Mike. Killer Mike said, we got to plot, we have to plan, we have to strategize, organize, and mobilize. And everybody needs to follow that rule of thumb. Everybody needs to follow that directive and do the same. That after the moment has passed, we are going to have to be really strategic about our demands and about what it is that we truly want to come out of this. You know, I've heard about citizens board. Every police force needs a citizen board, which means that the citizens of the town are actually a part of policing the police. That we need some are just like, shoot, dismantle the whole thing, dismantle the police force altogether, because it only serves to protect, as we have seen, a certain group of people. And until we have the kind of reform that puts in place protections for all people, it's not serving the community.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with the police for reform. That's one thing, because especially some of the ones that's been in the force for so long, they just stuck in that old school way, and they need to have their minds changed, or just how they do their job needs to be changed,
or not be a part of it. You know, we're hoping that way of thinking honestly dies out. That it dies out, and that we have a new crop of people who are going to be trained differently, who are going to be cultured differently, because some of this is a culture. The police force has its own culture, and for how they patrol a community, how they could patrol a community that's more brown or more poor, and that culture of inequality has to die out.
Yeah. Now we've seen Boston residents have been marching the streets since this weekend. Another one happened yesterday at Franklin Park. They're having one tonight. Just talk about how proud of you of the residents in Boston that are able to organize these marches, these peaceful protests without any incident. Because yesterday's incident, I heard it was agitated. The police agitated the crowd when the crowd was dispersing after they were all done. But so far in these protests, the people have been really positive and just there for the one message, and that's justice for George Floyd, and they haven't let nothing distract them from that.
As a Massachusetts resident, I am extremely proud that Boston, my town of Natick, which is a suburb, the town of Wellesley, have used their voice to go out, to speak out, the town of Newton, that people are taking to the streets to protest injustice. I think the overwhelming majority of what has happened in Boston has been positive. There have been incidents. I do believe that people have been arrested and there, have been damage to properties. But I think that it's about focusing on the point. Why are they even there? Let's not get distracted by, if there is an incident, because we know that's the small minority of why people are going to protest in the first place and what's actually happening. And so I'm proud to be a Massachusetts resident where we are speaking up about not just the injustice that's happening in Minnesota, but that injustice would happen anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Kristen, let the people know where they can find you if they want to follow you, if they want to have a conversation with you. Just let them know where they could contact you.
You can reach me at my website, KristenLPope.com, and that's KristenL Pope.com. I'm on Twitter at Kristen L Pope TV. You can reach me there. And let's keep this, not just this conversation going, but like you said, let's keep the momentum going and let's plot, let's plan, let's strategize, let's organize, let's mobilize. Let's not let George Floyd's life and his death be in vain.
Definitely. We just gotta stick together and make sure we stay focused on the task at hand. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Miss Kristen Pope. Glad to have her on. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Hope to do this again at some point when we see more things unfold. So, Kristen, you and your family definitely be safe. Stay safe and keep fighting the good fight.
Same to you, brother.
All right, have a good one. You guys have been watching the Plus One interview. That was Kristen Pope. I'm your host, Mikhail Kabongo. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.